You are listening to episode 19 of the Mom on Purpose podcast. This is part 2 of my conversation with Bethany, where we talk through character training and spiritual principles for public behavior. Welcome to Mom on Purpose podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for coming. The Mom on Purpose podcast is produced every week. Come back often and please subscribe in iTunes. All links and materials referenced are in the show notes, which you'll find at momonpurpose.com. Every Mom on Purpose episode starts with a quick mom verse to encourage you. Today's verse is Psalm 62, verse 8. It says, "Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us." And as moms, this is so true for us. We can trust in him at all times. When you don't know what to do with a child, when there's some discipline issue that's plaguing you, when you're discouraged about your relationship with your teen, whatever the situation is, you can trust in the Lord. It says, trust in him at all times. And then it says, pour out your heart before him. This is a wonderful gift. Our God wants to hear from us. He does not leave us to sort things out on our own. We can turn to him. So, Mama, pour out your heart before the Lord. And then it says God is a refuge for us. A refuge is a place of safety in a storm, or a place of safety when everything else is unsafe. The Lord is that for you. So make use of your strong refuge today. Trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart before him. He is a refuge for you. Today, Bethany and I are going to be talking through practical help for parenting kids in public. And I just want to specifically express that if there are things in this that do not line up with what your husband and you have decided needs to be done with your kids, then do not take this as a judgment. This is offered as practical help from some experienced moms to those who maybe are in need. But if you don't agree, this is just personal wisdom offered up. It is not biblical absolutes. And I want to be clear about that anytime you encounter something, not just on the Mom on Purpose podcast, but anywhere in the realm of parenting advice, you need to sift it through Scripture first and through you and your husband's decisions. Do not let the counsel of any other woman or any book or any blog or podcast override the role of Scripture in your life and the counsel of your husband. So with that, let me introduce you to my friend, Bethany Weatherby.
But yeah, doing rewards and stuff, I think if your kids are only behaving because they want to pay off, they need to learn to behave just because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So now I have millions of friends, well, millions might be an exaggeration, but I have lots of friends who have no shame in the fact that they bribe from time to time. And I get that. But I think if you look at it, if you maybe shoot for, instead of bribing, maybe have like a rare, kind of unexpected reward. So there have been times where maybe we had to go shopping at a time that was not ideal, and we're all bordering grumpy a little bit.
Yeah.
But we just do it, and it gets done, and they're well behaved, even though I know they don't want to be. Yeah. And sometimes at the end of that, Winco has the best bagels. So at the end there, I'll sometimes say, you know what? You guys have been awesome today, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to treat you guys to bagels.
Yeah.
And they all pick a bagel, but they didn't know it was coming.
Yes.
And then I think that's the difference. To reward things occasionally when it's unexpected, that can be good. It's acknowledging that you appreciate the effort they're putting into it.
Right.
But it's not bribing. So I think that's the difference.
Yeah. It's not,
I don't know.
It doesn't become the ticket for admission for good behavior. Right. It's a thank you.
Yes, exactly. There's not an expectation.
Yeah. Well, so if a mom is listening and she struggles with her kid's behavior, maybe she's sitting there feeling like, oh man, I've really blown it, or I've already started going down, kind of a bad path of doing these bribes or overlooking tantrums and letting them just scream or whatever, how would you encourage her? How could she be encouraged in this and maybe have a vision for something better?
Okay. Well, I would say there's no way around the fact that retraining is definitely harder. It is just going to be harder, but it's totally worth the effort, and you can do it. Your kids can do it. You can do it. It's fine. You have the power to do that. And it will be well worth the effort. Yeah. So if that's the situation you're in, I would say, maybe don't start, with the big, huge trip to Winco and then the bread store and Costco. Try just some short trips. And maybe that's going to be a little bit inconvenient. Maybe that's not how you normally shop. But do it for a month maybe. And maybe just once a week, do a short trip somewhere.
Yeah.
Like where you're getting maybe like 5 to 10 items, where it's enough that you have some time to practice, but not so long that if it goes poorly, everyone's just discouraged.
Yeah.
And do that same thing. And I think what's important there is to own your own irresponsibility in training your kids. And I've had different areas where I've had to tell my kids, your behavior in this area stinks. Yeah. It's really rotten. However, I have totally slacked off in dealing with it.
Yes.
And so we're kind of all at fault here. Yeah. And so you need to shape up, but I need to be diligent. And so I think for the mom who maybe hasn't been very good about this and who dreads shopping because her kids are out of control, is to just sit down with them and say, here's the deal, you guys. The way you're behaving in the store is not appropriate. Yeah. Assuming they're old enough, of course, to understand that. But
yeah.
And running down the aisles is not okay. Pulling things off of shelves is not okay. Crying, begging me for stuff, not okay. But I haven't trained you how to do it right, and so I'm sorry. And so starting now, we're going to practice doing it right, and I'm going to work with you guys to show you what to do instead of just getting mad at you about what not to do.
Yeah.
So own that, just own your own stuff. And then, do some short little trips and do that thing. Like I said, how I do bullet point tips right before we go in, stay close. Don't ask for anything. Don't touch anything.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, I think that's so critical, especially with the younger the kid is, the more reminders they need before we walk in a place.
Right.
And I've found that, we keep having kids. And so we keep having 2-year-olds who keep needing reminders,
Right.
And, so that kind of fades away as the kids get older, but especially the younger they are, those reminders before we walk in a store, just getting to the place where I've remembered to do that every single time has made such a difference.
And it feels redundant on your end,
yes,
but it's so helpful. And I think that if there's a mom who's having to kind of retrain, it's even more important, and maybe midway through the store.
Yeah.
Like I do another time is when you're done shopping and now you're up at the check stand, especially if it's a check stand where you're bagging your own groceries, to just say, okay, we're done shopping. You guys have done a good job. Now we're going to pay. Here's my expectation at the check stand. And I need you guys to all stay behind the cart, or, I need this kid and that kid to help unload, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then, let them know after we pay, then I want you to just stand at the end of the check stand, or I want you to stand on the wall that's, across the aisle or whatever.
Right.
But I think the check stand is another place where things go crazy. There's candy and gum and magazines and,
yes,
and so to clarify again what the expectations are for that little area, because it's different than the whole rest of the store. And you do just have to stand there. So yeah, I think that's
good. Well, we've gone really practical, but I also want to talk through what are the spiritual foundations as believers? What spiritual principles come into play here?
Okay, well, I confess that my motives were not spiritual in doing this. They were just purely practical. Like, I want to go shopping without a madness. But I do think there are some things. I think one is obedience. Ephesians says, children, obey your parents. And so if mom has said, don't touch things, then don't touch things.
Yeah.
And I think that actually kind of reminds me of what we were talking about a minute ago too, about the moms who maybe are dealing with kids who are already out of control in the store, is if bad behavior is limited to just shopping, then you just need to train them. But if there are obedience issues outside of the store, then it might just be a general obedience thing too, So,
yeah.
And that's going to look different in each family. But okay, yeah. So I think there's obedience for children obeying their parents is definitely part of it. I think respect is another piece there.
Are you talking about respect to you or respect of property, or what are you thinking there?
Kind of like so Matthew 7, like golden rule. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So it is a matter of respecting me, but it's also a matter of respecting the other shoppers, the store staff. Yeah. So, would you want someone coming into your space, your bedroom, your whatever, and just trashing it and throwing a fit? No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So respect that.
Yeah, that's one of the times in a store when I've really made it a point to slow down. Like if my child does grab 2 cereal boxes and they kind of, or maybe they don't grab them, but maybe their hip knocks it off the shelf or whatever.
Right.
Rather than me just leaning down and picking them up and putting them back on and going on, I'll say, I really make a big deal out of each thing like that. And I don't mean a big deal like I'm screaming at them, but I just mean I stop and pause on that moment and make a point of, each night men have to come in here. This store has to pay people to come and put these things on the shelves. We want to make sure we're doing a good job taking care of this and not messing up their store. And I really want to give my kids the full perspective that is not me-centered,
Right. Totally. And it is easier to just maybe quickly pick it up yourself. But, man, those little things, like you just picking up a box for them, which is not a big deal if you did.
Yeah.
But those little things can become the big things. That's an opportunity for just some character growth on their part.
Yeah.
I see that too. You talking about the people who clean up. Sometimes our kids will see, like a package of meat sitting on like the soup aisle or something. Like someone changed their mind and just put something in wherever they happen to be. And they're like, why did they do that? When they're little, why is that there? I said, because someone was too lazy to put it away. They changed their mind, which is fine, but they were too lazy to put it away. And so they just put it wherever, and it's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to see it. This is like a character thing here,
Yeah.
It's not just about, it's on the wrong place,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other thing that I thought of from like a spiritual aspect to this stuff is just about your reputation. Like your reputation matters. And the verse in Proverbs that says, in Proverbs 22, that says a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. And I don't want my kids to think their reputation, there are negative ways of looking at that. Like, you obviously don't need to worry about what everyone thinks of you. But at the same time, your reputation does matter. And what I have told our kids a lot, starting when they're little, is we want to be a family that if we walk into the store, because we always go to the same stores, we don't want people to cringe when they see us walk in.
Right.
A phrase that I use here sometimes is be a blessing, not a burden. And like you don't want to go into a place and be a burden unnecessarily, and I have seen so often, I think this would probably also kind of fall into that category of benefits we were talking about, is that for years, Jess, it's crazy. Like the amount of feedback that we get from store employees, and I don't think I've ever really even talked to people about this because I don't want to come off as sounding arrogant.
Yeah.
But it's relevant right now.
It is.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
From, in our house, if you have a doctor's appointment and you can talk, well, then you check yourself in. And it might be that you're little and I lift you up so you can see over the counter. But, you learn to say, my name is whatever. I have a 2:00 appointment. Or, if you have a question at the grocery store, you go ask. You go make eye contact when you're doing a business transaction. I'll say, look her in the eye. Look him in the eye.
Wow.
And I think, I remember when we've had kids that are like 5 and we're in Starbucks and they place their order. And I've had, the lady at Starbucks say, thank you so much for having your 5-year-old order, because we have 16 and 17-year-olds who come in and whisper their order in their parents' ear. And then the mom orders for them. Like on a regular basis, enough that it's not just something fluky with that family,
Yeah. Yeah.
She said they're incompetent and they don't know how to do it. Or like Costco, that's a place where the sample people there, we hear constantly, thank you for teaching your kids good manners. And I've had, one lady told me, thank you for, I appreciate that your kids say, may I please have whatever, or may I please have one. And she said, obviously they can. That's why the samples are there. She goes, and if I have to say, yes, you may all day long, that might get kind of old. She goes, but when I have kids coming in trying to be polite, I'm going to work with that. She's like, I appreciate that so much. And back to the reputation, like and this is kind of sad, but I've had the Costco people tell us, the sample people, that they said the worst time for the most rudeness for the people who come to their sample tables are the Sunday after church crowd. And she said, I don't know if it's because the kids haven't eaten or because they've been in church all morning, but she said, people in general are often very rude, but especially that. And I just thought, that's not, that's not how it should be.
Yeah.
And so I think, that's been a blessing to have, not that we need pats on the back.
Right.
And I assure you, as any other family, our children have a slew of things that they are not good at and problems we need to work on and stuff. But in this one area that we've invested a lot of effort, it has been nice to see that, yes, it does matter. Like, this is not something that we're doing in vain. And that, yes, it's making my life easier because I can go to the store without stress, but it's also a blessing to the people working in the store.
Yes.
Who are thankful to have kids who are well behaved, and our kids hear that from them on a pretty regular basis. Thank you. You guys were very well behaved. Thank you for asking nicely. So, that piece about your reputation, I think it's not just about your reputation as, for our family, it's not just, how do people think of the Weathersbys when they walk into Costco?
Right.
But it's also, if they know that we're Christians, then that's part of our testimony.
Yeah.
That's our, so I think, like, I don't want to over spiritualize a trip to the grocery store.
Right.
But
well, and I'll confess, as a large family, that's something that I'm very aware of, because like it or not, people do look at us and immediately we stand out, and they assume things about us. And one of those things is likely that we are Christians. And so the way that we behave and the way that our children behave and the way that we interact really does matter.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you on that. Well, so we've talked about practical things, but is there anything else practical that you had to share with listeners to make progress in this area?
I think really, if you had to kind of just boil it all down, that really the most important practical thing is to have really clear expectations. Really clear. Not like, hey guys, I want you to behave, but like, what are the ways that you want them to behave? Have clear expectations, and then along with that, a realistic plan to meet those expectations. So it's not just saying, I expect you to behave while we're in the grocery store. It's saying, here's exactly the specific things I'm expecting from you, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to, maybe depending on the kid or the scenario, maybe you role play it a little bit at home. How do you how do you do the transaction? Sometimes my kids pay the bill at the end of our, while I'm bagging groceries, they take my debit card and pay that. So, how do you do that? How do you punch in the PIN and swipe and, look the lady the checker in the eye?
Oh, that's good. I needed to hear this, Bethany, because I don't do this yet with my kids. So this is a good kick in the pants for me.
Well, it's good because then sometimes you can just let them run in with your debit card.
That's good.
But yeah, so I think clear expectations and then a realistic plan. And what's a realistic plan, in your family might look different than my family. And that's fine. There are various factors, personalities and ages and number of kids and whatever. But yeah, I think really ultimately it boils down to just a clear expectation and a realistic plan.
Yeah, that's good. Well, do you have any resources on this topic or books that have shaped your thinking? Anything that you want to share with listeners?
I can't think of any books or anything. And there are, a bazillion books out there, and I'm sure there are some great ones. I think, though, that with things like this, what I find most helpful is, especially if this is not something that comes naturally to you, is to watch other people. I think so much of parenting wisdom comes from just watching. And you've talked about that, how it may not be like, you may watch me in some other area and be like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. But you can glean things from other parents. So I think if you just watch other families and kind of make note of what you like what you'd want to kind of copy, what you'd like to avoid.
Yeah.
And then if you know people, specific people that you can say, hey, I've noticed this particular thing, you're doing it well.
Yeah.
And so, if, maybe that's a family at your church. And I realize the church isn't the grocery store, but it's a public place.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's a family whose kids are generally, they're kids, but they're well behaved. And maybe you ask them, hey, how have you done that? Or, maybe it is some random stranger in the store who you see, you kind of, sometimes you keep crossing paths with somebody in the store, and maybe you just ask them or just acknowledge hey, your kids are really well behaved and I've been kind of watching. And so I think asking specific people specific questions can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Because you've already seen the fruit of their labor.
Yes.
And so that it's probably going to be effective, even if it looks maybe a little different in your family. I think the other, resource that I would say in this era of social media is I find that Facebook, and I'm not on other social media, but I'm sure it's the same way in other places, but I think Facebook can be really nice for when I just need a collective brainstorm on something.
Uh-huh.
And so to say, how do you guys handle this? How do you handle grocery shopping? How do you handle taking your kids into the doctor's office without it being a nightmare or whatever, the public situation is you're facing? And then let the advice roll in. And you can go through that and sift through it and kind of just shrug off the stuff that, for one reason or another will not jive with your family.
Yeah.
But there will be good stuff in there. And the good stuff may come from a person who overall you don't really copy their parenting style, But like you said, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So I really think, for me, I think the biggest thing is just watching and asking questions and then watching some more,
That's great. I feel like I've learned a few things or come in contact with a few things just from this conversation that I'd like to try. One of which is we do divide and conquer some, but I don't think I use that strategy as much as I should. And I definitely haven't used the debit card time as a time of training, but what a great, that is a great time. I've got a 14-year-old myself, and soon enough they'll be adults. So those are great challenges for me too. Well, thank you, Bethany. I really appreciate you diving into this practical topic with me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, I hope it's helpful to somebody.
If you missed part 1 of this conversation, go back to episode 18 for practical tips for making it through a grocery store with your kids. Episode 20 is going to be me talking with my friend Wendy about the biblical foundation for disciplining our children. So be sure to come back for that. It's going to be good. Thanks for listening to the Mom on Purpose podcast. For more information and all links and show notes, go to momonpurpose.com. You can make a huge difference in how many women find and benefit from this podcast. Please like Mom on Purpose on iTunes and take 2 minutes to leave a review. I'll meet you again next time to equip you to be a mom on purpose.